for coming today. My name is Scott Edinburgh. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting so far, I'm the founder of Personal MBA Coach, boutique MBA admissions consulting and tutoring firm based here in Boston. I went to MIT for my undergrad, actually studied at Sloan, and I worked in consulting for a few years and did my MBA from Wharton. And we work with applicants around the world to help them to increase their chances of getting into top schools like MIT Sloan. Have the pleasure of having Katy here from MIT Sloan to chat with you all today. So at this time, I'll pass it over to Katy. She'll tell you a little bit about MIT, and then we'll go into some Q&A afterwards. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just type them in the comment section, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can throughout the presentation. So Katy, off to you.
Great, thank you. Always a pleasure to collaborate with an alum of the school. So thank you for being here. Hi everyone. I'm Katy. I am the Senior Associate Director of Admissions at MIT Sloan. And I will say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm sure we're being joined by folks from all over the world. And before we get started, I just want to wish you and of course your family and friends continued good health wherever you are in the world. So it's always important at MIT that we start at the mission. And if you're not familiar with the mission of MIT, or MIT Sloan, it is to develop principled, innovative leaders who improve the world. And this really is something that resonates with our community every single day. It is often part of our conversations with our students. It shows up in the classroom, in the conversations our faculty are having, and it certainly drives a lot, if not all, of the initiatives we have around the school and how we connect back to the Institute of MIT. Certainly in this time, that mission statement couldn't hold truer to the activities happening both at MIT Sloan, but out in the world. Our faculty, our students, and our alumni have been incredibly engaged in the local as well as the global community in the fight against COVID-19, and coming up with solutions to the world's greatest problem right now, and that is very much at the forefront of how our community functions and prospers every day at Sloan. A couple of just quick notes about what the fall of 2020 looks like at MIT Sloan this year. We do have a hybrid model in place. What that means for a Sloan student is if they're able to be in the Cambridge area and have the option of being on campus, they are on a rotating schedule depending on their course. We are keeping our classrooms at 20% capacity, and so depending on the size of the classroom, then that number will vary. That is in alignment with the state of Massachusetts and the city of Cambridge's policies in the current day. All of our students, faculty, and staff that are rotating through campus. So you may have class online Monday, but come to class on Wednesday, and then go back online the following week to open up that seat for a peer to be on campus. We do have a rigorous testing system in place at MIT. Students are tested regularly, if not every 14 days, even sometimes every 7, just to make sure that we're keeping on top of any potential cases. There has been no need to close campus since we launched on September 1st, and it's been great to see students back around campus, as well as our peers in the staff and the faculty world. And of course, we just want to remind all of our community to continue practicing social distancing around campus, around the Cambridge area, as well as just practicing those healthy standards. So at MIT Sloan, we are a portfolio of master's degree programs. Today, I'm going to focus primarily on what you see here in the middle of our portfolio, the MBA program, which is our 2-year MBA program, as well as the LGO, the Leaders of Global Operations. The MBA program is the flagship program at MIT Sloan. It represents about 2/3 of our students. We matriculate about 415 students into that MBA program every fall, and about 50 of those students will also come from the Leaders of Global Operations program. This is one of 3 degree programs where students will earn 2 degrees. In the LGO program, you'll earn a Master's of Science in an engineering discipline, as well as an MBA in 2 years. It's an incredible academic and professional experience, incredibly intense and rigorous, as you can imagine. But to be able to come out with both of those degrees in 2 years is pretty amazing. Our other 2 degree programs that are dual degree offerings, one is with the Department of Urban Studies and Planning, or DUSP, at MIT. The second is with the Harvard Kennedy School for Government. Most students will earn an MPP, Masters of Public Policy or Public Administration degree, in combination with an MBA. Those 2 programs are 3 years as opposed to 2. And if there's more questions about that, I'm happy to answer them as we go through the next hour. A little bit further on the spectrum, we do have 2 executive degree offerings that earn the same MBA. One is a full-time Sloan Fellows 1-year sabbatical program. The second is a more traditional executive MBA, where our students work full-time and come to MIT about once a month for Friday and Saturday classes. A little bit further down the spectrum, you'll see the Masters of Business Analytics, as well as the Masters of Finance program, and our MBA Early Admissions. This is our deferred early admissions program for the full-time MBA. These are what we consider early career or pre-experience programs. And if there's any questions about those as we go, I'm happy to answer them as well. One quick thing about the curriculum in the MBA at MIT Sloan is it is a general management curriculum, very much rooted in the science of management, equipping you with those frameworks and tools to drive better decision-making through analytics, through data science, both qualitative and quantitative decision-making. It is coupled then with those business essentials that represent that general management framework or mindset, and then how do those work together to establish the best business practices or solve the your industry, your company's greatest challenges. We do have a 1-semester core in our MBA program at Sloan. That means that your very first semester, you will have almost all of your courses, with the exception of 1 elective, prescribed for you. And then your second, third, and fourth semester of the program are 100% elective. This allows you to really customize that experience and tailor it towards your needs based on what the next step in your career path is. It can be overwhelming to think about choosing from hundreds of electives at Sloan, as well as taking advantage of the cross-registration opportunities around MIT, as well as Harvard. So there are a few ways that our students structure their experience or create a more specialized approach. The most structured experience is called a track. And you can see on the screen, those are in the form of finance, enterprise management, as well as entrepreneurship and innovation. These are tracks that you will apply to and decide if you want to join in the summer before you matriculate. They are not part of the admissions process. And then they really take hold right away in that first semester. If you're looking for something that has a little bit of structure, but still more opportunity to be flexible and customize that experience, a certificate may be interesting for you. Those are in healthcare, sustainability, and analytics. Very, very popular at MIT Sloan right now, as you can probably imagine. All of these options are non-binding. So if you start one of these tracks or certificates, by no means are you bound to it. You have to finish it. One quick caveat with the track is that you do have to start the track at the beginning of your 2 years in order to complete the track. There's just some milestones every semester, some boxes that you need to check that don't repeat every single semester. In addition to that, and I'm sure we'll go deeper into this with all of your questions, one of the hallmarks of the MIT Sloan experience is the hands-on learning, what we refer to as action learning. It's a pedagogy that was developed at MIT to connect the theory in the classroom with the practice in the real world. And how we do this is most often through electives called action learning labs, where you'll work in small groups with a real company, usually with a real peer group or a management group, on site to solve a real problem that they've put forth. Great test in trying out a new industry, a new function, or a new part of the world if there's something you're thinking about making a shift into. There is a whole alphabet of labs. There's sustainability lab, leadership lab, global entrepreneurship lab. About half of them have a global or international travel component, and the other half are more local to the Boston area, most often working with large, like multinational or medium, large size companies. It's not all about the academics, though MIT certainly is a rigorous quantitative academic experience. There is an incredible student life experience, both at Sloan, but at MIT as well. There's about 100 different clubs that our students engage in. Normally, they'll take leadership roles somewhere between 4 and 6 different clubs. And within those clubs, they may take a leadership role in the board or in hosting a conference or whatever that may mean for that particular student organization. About half of the clubs are more directed towards your professional goals and your professional experiences. And then the other half of the clubs are more directed and focused on your personal interests, like the Happy Belly Club, for example, my favorite one for sure. I talked a little bit about sort of that network that you're joining when you become a Sloan student. You are a graduate student at MIT, which then garners you a lot more access to the rest of the institution. And certainly you'd become an alumni of the MIT Sloan School of Management as well as MIT. And certainly we would encourage you to get out and explore that community and take advantage of everything that is around you outside of that classroom experience. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the application checklist. You'll see on the the left side of your screen, all the components of our application. They are all posted on the website, and my colleagues recently recorded some great webinars that dive really deep into all these components and give you sort of your tips and best practices for a successful application. I will pull out a few items we get the most questions on. One is the organizational chart. This is something we introduced to our MBA programs a few years ago, and it's a fantastic data point for us to really understand what your impact is on the people and the product and the process around you every single day. If you're looking at applying to the 2-year MBA or the LGO program, I'm by no means looking to see if you're managing people or managing teams. That's not my expectation when I'm looking at the organizational chart. I really just want to see who works around you, who do you influence, who influences you every day. If anyone's joining us today from our executive population, we would want to see that you have people management or team management experience then. The video statement, one of my most favorite parts of the application. This is really just your way to continue introducing yourself to the admissions committee. The prompt is that you're introducing yourselves to your future classmates, but only the admissions committee is going to see these videos. You can just use your phone or your laptop, choose your favorite 60-second clip. Do not hire a film crew. Do not professionally edit this. We're not looking for anything of that caliber. What we're trying to assess here is your communication style. So we want to hear you and see you in the video, but we also are just getting to know your personality and what interests you beyond those professional accolades or interests. But otherwise, have fun with it if that fits and suits your personality. But just remember, it is a business school application video. And then last year, we did reduce our letters of recommendation to just one. And I mean wholeheartedly, we just want one letter of recommendation. This will allow you to really pinpoint who that person should be for you, and then share with them those details of why MIT Sloan is of interest to you and why you'd like to be a part of our community as they proceed to fill out that letter of recommendation. We do ask for 2 additional professional references, just names and contact information. If we contact them throughout the process, don't worry about it. If we do not contact them, don't worry about it. Last year was something we introduced. We did reach out a handful of times just to get a little bit more clarity or some extra data. but it's not something that I see us doing regularly. You'll notice the deadlines on the other side of the screen. We are a deadline-driven admissions process. I did go ahead and cross out our round 1 application deadlines. Those have now passed. We are in the process of evaluating the round 1 applications. We'll be starting to interview in the coming weeks, and we'll be releasing our decisions for round 1 in mid to late December. And then we move into round 2, and then finally round 3. We do not work on rolling admissions, so please work towards those deadlines. And remember, that also is a deadline for your recommender. We do have a required interview. Normally, it would have been required in person. And unfortunately, but probably no surprises, all of our interviews this year will be virtual. But they will have the same format, and we'll be looking to gather the same information. It is a behavioral interview. And so we're really looking to deep dive into a handful of your past experiences to understand your behaviors in those experiences, because we do feel that they're very telling of the type of member of our community that you'll be when you come to MIT Sloan. We don't have an essay, though we sometimes get told we have hidden essays. One is in our cover letter. This is a very short, like an executive memo, introduction to our admissions committee. My tip here is to make sure that you're following a professional cover letter format, but there's lots of different ways that you can tackle this, and some of that information is online. And then if you are invited to interview, we do ask you to optionally submit an essay telling us how you'll contribute to our diverse community here at MIT Sloan. So with that, I am going to go ahead and take my sharing, or stop my sharing, and we're going to go to your questions, because usually your questions will create a really rich conversation, and we'll get through as many as we can before the top of the hour.
Great. Well, thank you, Katy. Fantastic. Super helpful, and
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone has really enjoyed all that information. So we'll go and start to ask some questions here. So there's one about recruitment for nonprofit, social impact, and government space. What are you seeing these days?
Yeah, good question. We're seeing a lot more of our students coming in wanting to pursue what I would call sort of the dirt road of career development, right? And this would include social impact, nonprofit, and certainly the government space, local, city, and national government. What I think is key here is that these types of organizations, or within these industries, they're traditionally not coming to campus for that more traditional on-campus recruiting experience. We call this the dirt road, as I said earlier. This is going to take a little more resilience, rolling up your sleeves, a lot of flexing that networking muscle, and leaning into the career development office. They're a phenomenal group of individuals at MIT Sloan, and they are here to be a resource from start to finish. At Sloan, you have a career core set of curriculum that's embedded in that first semester, and then after that, it is really as flexible or as accessible as a student wants it to be. But you'll definitely find yourself building that networking skill with alumni, current students, and certainly through action learning projects.
Fantastic. So here's a question that I often get from clients, and so I thought it made sense to highlight this, right? So they come to us, okay, I'm ready to apply, let's help, but I haven't done a lot of volunteer, experiences for whatever reason, whether it's being the family's breadwinner or a variety of other areas. So what are some ways that you've seen folks successfully balancing that in their application?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I know that people have all different experiences coming into their business school applications. What I think we're looking to understand is what interests you outside of your work. And sometimes it's embedded in the work that you do. Maybe your organization or your team does other activities sort of beyond the scope of your role. And it's not necessarily something that you're taking your free time outside of work to do. So we do often see and we'll look for that extracurricular activities there. In your video, this is a great place to talk about what has led you to this, or what else has contributed to you wanting to be a part of a community like MIT Sloan, and maybe not as all, and maybe it's highlighting some more of those more personal interests, or sort of your personal story. That's where I would see a lot of that information too. But it's a balance, and I think we know that people are coming from lots of different paths.
So here's maybe a more personal question, for you. So what are some things that you love about MIT? Any popular social professional clubs? Any kind of key club? It's always a trick one. What is the quote culture like? But what kind of keeps you there?
Oh, what keeps me there? So I've been at Sloan for 9 years, and what keeps me here is the opportunities that I've had to engage in the community, to grow and to develop myself, but also when I first started at Sloan, I worked on the program side for our EMBA, and I got to see firsthand how our students engage with our faculty. After classes, any day of the week, there's always a faculty in the hallway or sort of shuffling out of the classroom with a group of students around them. Students, I find, know that the faculty are so accessible at Sloan, and they take full advantage of that. And the faculty love that. They want to make sure that they're building those relationships, that they are helping the students advance in an area that is of interest to them. So I think that's a real hallmark of the Sloan. I would even say the MIT experience is just how grounded and accessible our faculty are. My other favorite part about MIT Sloan is just the community of stakeholders. Everyone drives our mission forward. And I have been invited to be a part of initiatives that were driven by students, but they recognize that there's more than just students as stakeholders. There's more than just faculty as stakeholders in the school's growth. And they will invite significant others, as well as staff and the leadership of the school to be a part of these initiatives. And that's my favorite part, I would say. Fantastic.
So I left this question sort of as is, but I'm sure you'll answer it in a slightly different way. How Sloan views older applicants, and maybe can sort of talk about some of the other program options and how you're sort of thinking about work experience versus age as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it is a range of years of experience. We don't talk a lot about age in the admissions process. So what we're looking to understand is the number of years of experience that you have in a professional setting post-undergraduate degrees. Many of our students do come to school with a secondary, like a master's degree or a secondary post-undergraduate degree, and we'll look at how that played into your career path. But when someone comes in with more than 9 or 10 years of experience, we're going to look closely at what's their level of decision making. Are they already in a place of influence? Are they managing people? Are they managing teams? Do they have general management exposure or access already in their career path? And to me, that means that their peer group is more likely one of our mid-career executive level MBA programs, whether that's the more traditional EMBA or the Sloan Fellows. In those programs, we average 14 to 15 years of experience. It is a range. It is 10 to 25 years, just like our 2-year MBA program is 2 to 10 years of work experience. And so when I come across applicants in that sort of 9, 10, 11 years of experience, I will look at what's the experience been so far? What's the impact that they've had, especially around leadership and management and decision making.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that answers a few questions here, today. So here's one that I think should probably be a quick one, kind of working for a short period of time, 10 months in the current organization, don't have a lot of achievements. Can I go back? And then maybe how far back? Because I know that different schools have different policies in terms of how far back you really want to look when thinking about recommenders.
Yeah. So we don't have a specific policy, but my recommendation would be to only really go back a couple of years, right? It's likely that you've grown and changed since that supervisor has last been engaged in your accomplishments, your areas of growth and development. What's really important to us is that letter of recommendation provides us with, like, what I like to say is positive anecdotal evidence, right? I want to read an example or a story that they personally can relate to and share how you've what you accomplished in that project or how you overcame a milestone. But also we're asking them to tell us what's next for you. What is your area of growth in order to reach that next stage in your career path? And sometimes when we go back more than 2, 3, 4 years, those managers are great and they may be advisors or mentors to you now, but they may not be as closely connected to your more recent accomplishments. But at 10 months of experience with a new manager, it wouldn't seem strange to me that someone went back to a previous manager. We just help us connect that dot.
Sure. Makes sense. So you talked a little bit about diversity beforehand as far as that extra essay that you have. So here's sort of a question, I guess, back to the admissions committee. How does MIT support or encourage diversity of students?
Yeah, this is a very important question. So Vanessa, thanks for asking it. I'm really proud to be a part of the MIT community and specifically the Sloan community. What I mentioned earlier about students driving initiatives, we have been working extremely closely with our student clubs, the Black Business Student Association, the Hispanic Business Club, and the Africa Business Club, as well as our Sloan Women in Management Club specifically, to really look closely at how we're engaging a population and that may be looking to pursue an MBA and sharing with them the community and the opportunities at MIT Sloan. We've actually added new dashboards and metrics that are allowing us to look at how much we're engaging with the population, the new ways we're engaging with these audiences. But I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about students really driving this initiative. A couple of years ago in the Sloan Senate, which is our student governing body at the Sloan School, a committee was formed to advance, or to really, I would say, first look at the lack of diversity in the learning mechanisms of the Sloan classroom. That means the faculty, it means and means case studies or the way that our students are learning new frameworks and tools. They formed a committee, and that included faculty and deans. And what came to fruition or came out of that was that Sloan needed to focus on creating their own mechanisms for sharing more diverse profiles, more diverse stories in the classroom as a learning tool. That then grew into a much larger initiative and group of individuals formed by the dean's office. And one of my bosses, Donna Levinson, Assistant Dean of Admissions, was part of that committee to drive forward diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and goals in a number of different areas. One being admissions and the growth of the student population, then the student experience that would include the academic experience and the student life experience, our faculty profile and expanding diversity there. And then finally, our staff profile. That is a public document on our website, and you can read some more information on the website from our Dean Dave Schmidtline, and sort of the milestones that we've already gotten closer to, and really taking it beyond the conversation and words on a paper and talking about what's actionable. The most actionable thing that's happened since that report was released by the committee is that we have appointed 2 associate deans at the faculty level that are now focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at the Sloan School of Management, working very closely with MIT's new, and I'm going to blank on his exact title, that's terrible, he's a senior leader at MIT who came from outside of the institution last spring to really drive action around DEI. So lots to come, lots happening, but certainly just so glad to be a part of an organization that is so open to this conversation.
Fantastic. So this is actually a question that I get often. So at Personal MBA Coach, we help a lot of folks with the Sloan Fellows Program, many other executive programs, and we always get this question of how does career services vary across these sort of programs? So maybe
that's a great question, because there are I used to live in Southeast Asia and we always said same but different. So the similarities are that we have one career development office, and then the differences are within that office, there are teams that are dedicated to different populations at Sloan. So that may be the 2-year MBA, our executive degree students, as well as our early career, those more specialized master's students. The team that is dedicated to our career development for for mid-career students or executive level students, like the Sloan Fellows, has this year been able to align a career core for the very first time with the Sloan Fellow core academic experience. So that's something that's happened new this year, which we're really excited about. One of the biggest differences with an executive level student is the idea of on-campus recruiting is really not going to lead to the type of role that an executive student is going to be looking for. You're looking for a more senior role, since you're coming in with more experience. The types of roles that you're looking to achieve and obtain post-graduation are not going to be something that we see show up in a traditional on-campus recruiting program. So that dirt road, working really closely with your career development officers, with alumni, with your program advisors, and networking and carving out those conversations to lead to that sort of just-in-time hiring, whether it's something new you're carving out at an organization or it's a role that's now been vacated by a senior leader that you're going to be in the running for. That is the more common way that an executive student interacts and takes advantage of the career development experience at Sloan.
And one thing that I often talk about with applicants is really just that, but not to put you on the spot to give me a percentage, but is that percentage of students that even get a job through on-campus recruiting to begin with. Because often even in a full-time program, a lot of people are getting jobs through their own network and sort of talking with friends and not necessarily just by dropping the resume.
It's a great point. And so our executive students have been doing this for years, right? Working the network, really just out there talking to people and carving out their own opportunities. And we saw with the class of 2019 in the 2-year MBA, and we're still waiting on the data for the report from the 2020s, that upwards of 60% of them, of our alumni, reported getting their post-graduation job out of the network and on a sort of less traveled road and not through traditional on-campus recruiting. So, you know, you're an MIT alumni. The more disruptive our students can be, the happier it makes me.
Right. Yeah, and that's worth everyone really thinking about, because folks are always thinking about how will I get the job from the school, and it's not always directly from the school.
I want to say one more thing. It's also really important when you're exploring the career development opportunities at a school that you think about it as a long-term journey and a long-term relationship. You are building you're developing the skills to not just get that first job, but that second, that third, that fourth job. The Career Development Office at Sloan is a resource for life. And so there are alumni resources available to you when you're ready for that next step up, whether it's internally or externally down the road.
And they're fantastic. Not that I'm currently using them, but I can say that they're, as an alum of MIT, I can say that they're fantastic. So here's something that I'm sure a lot of folks will, have on their minds. And I've had a lot of questions about this, not necessarily exactly as it's here, but so now that it's test optional, I don't use the word waves, but in any case, how are you thinking about evaluating folks, and what is changing, if anything at all?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say actually not that much is changing. The GMAT, GRE, and if you're an executive level student, the executive assessment would have always been one data point, right? When we look at applications, we're evaluating really 2 buckets. One are your demonstrated successes. This is your academic background, the types of courses you took, the grades that you earned in those courses. Your test score is a way for us to measure readiness or sort of academic readiness for the rigor, but also your work sort of progression. Those are things that you've demonstrated that you've achieved. And then the other bucket is the more personal attributes, leadership potential, etc. So if you're not able to submit a GMAT or a GRE score, and there's lots of reasons why people are not able to access that test. And we just wanted to get ahead of what we unfortunately envision being even harder come the winter months here at least in the Northern Hemisphere. If you have an old or outdated test, that is a great data point. It still helps us understand where you are in being ready for a program like MIT Sloan's. If you've taken other professional certifications, the CPA, CFA, we're happy to see those. My dean even said the other day, MCATs, things like that. We're happy to see those as well. And of course, any additional coursework that you've taken. This is not a requirement. Please don't run out and feel like you need to take extra online courses. But if you have taken those, please upload those as relevant coursework to the application. But we are looking for a lot of different things in the application. That's just one of the ways that we're going to be able to measure sort of your readiness for the rigor.
Great.
Yeah.
So here's a question about, and I don't know if you could talk about internship experiences, maybe just sort of experiences in general for some of the dual degree offerings like MBA and MPP folks.
Yeah, good question. So one quick note about the internship for the MBA program at Sloan. It has been made a requirement of the program. So all of our MBA students have a required summer internship that they'll participate in some way through that in that summer. With the dual degree programs, with the MPP, with Harvard Kennedy School or the DUS program, the way that the mechanics work is that it's a 3-year program or 3 years outside of your career. You'll do 1 full year at one school, and then the next year you'll do a full year at the other school, because there's core requirements at both programs that you need to fulfill. And then in the final 3rd year, you'll sort of integrate and spend your time across both schools. You can actually do a full year at Sloan, do an integrated year in the middle, and then a final year at HKS. The students that are in that program choose different options. I think there's really 3 different options based on the courses or the electives that they're interested in, because electives are offered at different times of year and they have different prerequisites. So we do have an advisor in the program that will help you navigate which is the right option for you. And then you do 2 different summer internships. One would be through the MBA experience and more potentially aligned with your MBA or your business interests. And then the HKS internship, I would imagine will fall into the same realm of industry or focus, but may have a different flair depending on what their requirements are when you're a student. But there are 2 internships.
Great. So here's an interesting question, and I guess what we're looking for is something more than just the dates that are being published as far as the deadlines, but when are the applications actually being assessed? And if I can read into this, I don't know, Asim, if this is what you're thinking, but I know that I had a client ask me, well, what if I take an exam later, a little bit later? You can now submit it without it. Can I submit it a little bit afterwards? So I don't know if that's what you're thinking, but maybe that's kind of a two-part question. So when are they actually being analyzed? And then, could someone submit something a little bit after, or do you just kind of discourage that?
Consulting answer, it depends. We don't start reviewing applications until the deadline. So for round 2, once that deadline hits or passes, we will then, as a committee, review all applications that are submitted. We review every application in rounds 1, 2, and 3. And then our admissions committee is a small group of the leadership staff, as well as leadership from the program and career development offices. We come together and calibrate across those applications and make decisions then about who will move forward, in this case, to interview. And then we have the same process post-interview for making decisions about admittance to the program. It's an interesting question. And even before sort of the challenges with the GMAT and the GRE came up, we got this question often. Oh, I'm going to sit for the test one more time. Can I submit that score late? You certainly can. However, if a decision has already been made about your application, we won't go back and change our decision. So this becomes sort of a cat and mouse game. And I think really the applicant knows best whether they're ready to hit submit on their application. I always tell people, it's in your best interest to apply early. certainly that would mean rounds 1 and round 2, just for the nature of sort of the math, right? It's like Legos. We're building a class, and when we get to round 3, we just have fewer spots available. We never fill the class in round 1. We will never fill the class when we get through round 2. But by that point, we've probably sat close to 80% of the class by the time round 2 completes. So it really depends on, how confident someone feels in the material and everything else they're preparing to submit into their application. But if you submitted on their deadline day and then took the test the next day and you liked your score, yes, you can certainly email our Adcom and they'll add that new score to your application.
Great. And I'll rephrase this question a bit, because we actually got a few questions about org charts. Just different organizations are different. Some are large, like someone from the military was asking, how complicated do I need to make it versus there are 5 people and I'm just putting 4 other names. So what I tell clients is just put the names and show where people are assigned to if there is any kind of assignment. But is there anything else that they should be doing or thinking about?
Yeah. So this is one of the exact reasons why we introduced the organizational chart to the MBA program application, because some students are coming from companies with 5 people and some are coming from companies with 25,000 people. So if you're on the higher end of the organization size spectrum, I don't need a 25,000 person org chart, right? I always use Amazon as my example. I know who's at the top of Amazon. I want to see your business unit, your team, maybe within the business unit. Who does your manager report into? And then who's around you? There are a lot of ways that you can build this. I see lots of dotted lines. What's most important to me is that I don't have to kind of scroll to find you. I used to read applications on the iPad, so that's my description. But I want to know where you are and then sort of who's around you. For military or anyone who's coming from an organization where privacy may be an issue, you certainly don't have to include names if that's not appropriate or really permitted. As much information that you can share so we understand what the different boxes on the page represent is great. Another reason is if people are coming from a startup and they tell me I'm a co-founder, I don't know if there's 8 co-founders or 2 co-founders, right? And when there's 8 co-founders, I want to understand what your impact is every day. What are you really working on? What's your influence on the organization? And so that the org chart really does help us sort of fill in some of those gray areas about what your program manager role means at your office and your group in that organization, because it really differs across company, across country borders, even within the same organization.
Great point. Yeah, and especially for new companies or smaller companies that you might have seen applicants, come from before.
Yeah.
Great. So it's a question about, clubs for students, with weak socioeconomic or minority backgrounds and from developing nations. Are there specific student clubs or other sort of resources, for these students?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways I can answer this. There are some really incredible clubs for our students coming from underrepresented minority backgrounds. I mentioned earlier the Black Business Student Association, the Hispanic Business Club, Sloan Women in Management, as sort of the 3 most forward largest clubs with the longevity at Sloan. This past year, I think the application this year actually is still just in review to have a new club established for first generation college graduate students. And they were that group of students, as they're in the process of establishing their new club on campus, was also part of our Identity and Inclusion Week this past August. And we're looking forward to collaborating with them more on future events to sort of showcase that group of students at MIT Sloan. Look, if the club doesn't exist or the initiative doesn't exist or the conference doesn't exist, create it. That is the sort of the mindset of Sloan. If the club went dormant and you want to bring it back to life, bring it back to life. There is an avenue to make all of this happen.
Great. And I know the answer to this one, but I think it's probably worth asking, and I'll actually broaden it a little bit. So not just as military service, kind of professional experience, but often we get the question, what about, PhD? I'm in this 7-year, PhD program. Is that 0? Is that 7? Is it somewhere in the middle? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, it really depends. So I'm going to be pretty broad in my response. Military specifically, yes, I would consider that almost always to be professional experience. Usually the question I get, especially with some of our more executive level students, is that, I did my degree while I was in the military. And so we can piece some of that together with your help in the application materials. But yes, we definitely consider that to be professional experience. For a PhD program, I think what we're looking to understand is what were you doing? What type of work were you doing? Were you engaging with other people? Was it solely research? Were you sort of in your office every day, siloed away? There's a difference between being in a lab and having maybe postdocs that you're working with or that are working on your research with you, or you're working with an outside organization compared to sort of being in your office or your lab by yourself every day. I will throw medicine into this loop or into this conversation, especially for our executive students. We see a lot of MDs that are coming into our executive degree programs as they sort of want to move away from the clinical side of their work. We do count residency as those years of work experience, but again, we're going to be looking for your impact on that community and how you engaged from a leadership perspective.
Great. Here's an interesting question, and I feel like as I read these, I'm always thinking, so what is the answer? Can I answer this? How does a school treat and help introverts to grow, whether through, I guess, like public speaking classes or other opportunities?
Yeah, this is a good question. We were just talking about this as we were in a calibration meeting earlier to review applications, because the video, I think, it makes people feel like they have to come out sort of jumping from the rooftop. And that's not at all what Sloan is about. There is a place for everyone at MIT Sloan. In terms of development, there's so many different avenues to strengthen or get out of that comfort zone. Down to just in the classroom, I think your peer group is going to always encourage you and hold you accountable to whatever that goal may be, whether it's giving a presentation to the class or taking a leadership role or outwardly facing leadership role in a conference or a hackathon or something like that. I always encourage my students to think about what those handful of goals are coming in, be flexible to them changing, and then figure out what that mechanism is to hold yourself accountable, right? Asking your peers for feedback or showing up to a team meeting and saying, this is something I want to practice, and I would like to use this opportunity to do that. They will be there to support you through that process for sure. We have an incredible leadership center at MIT that sits at the Sloan School, and they have lots of amazing electives and resources if that's an avenue that you want to sort of grow from an introverted versus extrovert perspective, and certainly courses like action learning, where you're going to be working with real companies and having a lot more forward sort of outward facing roles is a great place to experiment with that as well.
So here's a question about scholarship. So can you talk a little bit more about the scholarship process, if there's any sort of like percentage of students who get scholarships and any potential changes this year? And then probably last question. We'll see if we have time for one more before we wrap up.
Yep. So I would say about 30% of our students will earn a fellowship or be awarded a fellowship coming into the program. So admissions has the great responsibility of awarding incoming student fellowships. A majority of these fellowships are what we call Dean's Office fellowships, and they are based on merit. There are other fellowships that we award on behalf of of our alumni relations team that are seated by a group or individual alumni. So we award those as well. And those are all listed on our website. There are new fellowships in development right now. These do take time, but that are focused on diversity. So those will be new fellowships that we'll be looking at awarding and distributing in the coming years. There are lots and lots of other fellowship opportunities outside of Sloan, and I would say this is the right time to be exploring them. They often have different application processes that align with our materials. And so doing them sort of at the same time makes sense. The fellowships at Sloan in the MBA program will range from 15 upwards of $45,000. Then in your second year, there's a handful of fellowships that you can apply through. Some you'll be nominated for, others you can apply to, and those are managed by the MBA program office.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Katy, thank you so much for the time. This was super helpful. I learned a lot. I've been doing this for a while, so I'm sure all the applicants are learning a lot. And everyone for joining in, thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate all the great questions. I know whenever I do webinars with personal MBA coaches, if you don't get good questions, then it's not so fun. So thank you everyone for coming. Thanks for the questions. And Katy, if you have any last words, happy to hear.
No, just thank you, everyone. This was a great conversation. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see your applications either this year or in a future year. But stay healthy, and we wish you the best of luck in your journey.
Stay safe, everyone. Best of luck. Take care.